Can I just close out on a few very brief messages before passing across to Cathal on just some closing exercises again we always ask you to do. I just three broad reflections over the last couple of days in this Citizens Assembly meeting that we've had, our fourth one. And I think it was and always was going to be quite a challenge and probably one of the more complex Assembly meetings that we will have of our 6 Assembly meetings, because we were tackling 2 complex issues, which is the criminal justice issues and the legislative basis and the legislation itself. But 3 broad reflections that I would just take from the last couple of days. And the first one is pretty much, which has always come true on many of the Assembly meetings so far, there is some very good innovation happening and some good change going on within the current policy, within the current strategy and within the current services. And I think yesterday we heard a few good examples, but I kind of want a couple to bring out where the prison service, I think we heard some good innovation, how they're working with people, lived experiences, helping give services within the prison system. But they did highlight some of the challenges as people exit as well. And secondly, the drugs court, Judge Anne Ryan and the other contributors who contributed in relation to the potential benefits of a drugs court, which again, the challenges, as Judge Ryan had said, it is 20 years in a pilot, so there's something about. So I think for all of those innovations that we saw, there is a real opportunity to scale up, ramp up and roll out further that will have benefits and have proven benefits. So that's the first point I'd second. Second point I would just reflect back from yourselves. We certainly picked up, and I certainly picked up, and you've reflected back to me, a level of frustration at different stages throughout yesterday. And that's okay too, but you know, there was a level of frustration expressed, I guess, on a couple of fronts. The first one was, and I think table 8 yesterday probably kind of captured it well when, you know, they posed the question, if everything's okay, what are we doing here? And there might have been perception or a feeling created, sure, it's okay, and, you know, we'll stick with what we have. And I don't think that's the view of the Assembly members at this point, and I'm not trying to judge where we go, but I think everybody would agree something has to change, something has to be made better. We have been asked to reduce harm, so what do we do to reduce harm? So that's just a level of frustration I think came through there, and that's understandable again. The second one was, second level of frustration that came through was, if our current policy and strategy is to be a health-led approach, which is defined as being that, well then a real level of expression, if there was something to be put in place that was designed in 2017, agreed by government in 2019 for amended legislation to take place, it has gone nowhere. And we didn't get any sense of how it progresses from nowhere to somewhere. So that was a real level of frustration that you've expressed to me throughout yesterday and indeed yesterday evening. And I would say this is a really important issue because we've heard over the last while the harm that is caused by drugs. We've heard the lived experiences, the harm caused by many people and some people. We've also heard, as reflected today again, some people have a view, a very strong view, that harm may not be caused for some people. But we have heard the real harm that's caused to individuals, families and communities. And it's one thing if drugs themselves cause harm, but if the policy itself is causing harm, or the lack of change to an agreed policy and delaying in it is causing harm, that's inexcusable. So I would make the real call, strong call once again, to ministers, to government, to legislators, really get our act together, progress that legislation as a matter of priority. That should be our absolute baseline on what we build our recommendations on. So we're starting from my view on a baseline -1. That's not even there. So we need that legislation progressed, and we can build on that from whatever recommendations come through. So an immediate and urgent priority. And final thing I will say in reflection is I think what happened in today's session was we got a bit of clarity that this is complex, if that makes sense. Because, you know, it did land in the room, I think, the complexity of the legislation, what way our legislation is based, what it's based on, what's criminal, what's civil, the differentials between all that. So that kind of landed, I think, reasonably well for all of us. But I think, and I hope, what equally landed for us all is we don't have to work through that level of complexity. We have to set out where we want to get to, why we want to get there, what needs to be put in place, what line of flight do we need to get onto to get that put in place. And think about any potential unintended consequences that might arise from that, and also think about what's needed to put in place in implementation of such a recommendation. So that's the kind of level I think that came and a light bulb moment, I hope, for all of us that we need to keep ourselves focused on. So they're my 3 broad reflections. I hope they do reflect many of yours, and so there's others. In closing, I just want to do a few quick thank yous, and I'll take them just collectively together, and please, you can show your appreciation as a collective. But once again, to the Secretariat, all of the team who've put this work together, design it, they are already working on and have done a lot of work on our next Assembly meeting. So there's a lot of work goes into this, the design of it. And I do want to commend Cathal and the team. You know, the design of this one, which is a complex issue, I think we got a lot of contrasting views and presentations through and diverse views to help you frame your mind. The second, I'd like to thank the hotel again, Matt and his team. Tremendous operation, smooth running, helps us run it really smooth, and great quality food, etc. So thanks to Matt and his team. Our own Q4 communications team who work in the background here, but help ensure we get this debate and dialogue out in the public domain as well, in parallel to what's happening in here. Our facilitators, again, who work really hard around the table with you all, and I want to thank all our facilitators. Really want to thank our presenters over the last couple of days who put a lot of work in and time. And, you know, I know you all members give your time and your weekend up, but they too have given their time and the weekend up. And what always strikes me about presenters is how committed they are to the issue that they're here to talk to us on, how committed they want to see change happen. And I want to thank all of our presenters for that. Last couple of things, I just want to, Jerry and Sound and Pi Communications, as always, has been seamless. And Anthony, Nessa and Maeve, who are the HSE, working with us on psychological supports over the weekend, again, seamlessly in the background, there for people when they need to avail of it, and thanks to them for giving their time to us. Finally, a really sincere thanks to yourselves. You have put in a tremendous shift once again the weekend. I'm always going home from here inspired by what I see in front of me. You know by the body language, you know by the dialogue, you know by the buzz that's going on the tables, you know by the great camaraderie that's developing, you know, outside of the formal process, and that's part of it too, but particularly the effort and the work and the throughput that you go through coming up to these Assembly meetings, in the time coming up to the Assembly meetings, travelling to the Assembly meetings, but in particular the work over a weekend and giving your time to us. I really appreciate it, and well done to everybody. Thank you very much. So that concludes the live stream, and I'm going to pass across to Cathal to just do some closing logistics.
Thanks, Paul.